Greetings and welcome. My name is Mike Bankhead. I am your host. I am a bass player and songwriter from the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. Today on the podcast, for the first time, we go to film. Yeah, I'm talking to a director and a producer, Josh and Liv Roush. Josh is originally from Ohio, but currently based in Los Angeles. And Josh and Liv Roush are here to talk to me about their film Wrong Reasons, which they are taking on the road and touring with this year, and they're coming to Dayton. Let's get to the conversation. So left to right, you are Liv and you are Josh, and you have the same last name, which means that you are married. And I'm going to stop introducing you and let you all tell the lovely listeners who you are and what you do and why we're talking today.
I'm Josh Roush. I'm the writer-director of Wrong Reasons. Yeah, that's about the end of my credentials. I'm from Ohio. Yeah, I'm a Middletown native.
Yeah. Middletown.
And I'm Liv Roush. I produced the movie. I acted in the movie. I did some of the music for the movie. And I'm from Australia originally, but I moved to LA like 10 years ago and met Josh like 12 years ago. And married couple, working couple, all the things.
Josh, when did you abandon our fair state for Los Angeles?
I believe it was between 15 to 17 years ago. I really fell in love with like the Orange County punk rock music scene at a young age. So about 19 years old, when I was like really, really desperate to get out of Ohio, no offense, that is where I landed in Fullerton, California, which is Orange County.
And now you make movies, which if you're going to do that for a living, I mean, that's kind of where you got to be, right?
Yeah, it definitely seems like LA specifically is the hot spot. So, that's it. I definitely migrated up from Orange County to LA about 10 years ago.
Let's talk about the movie first. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff I want to talk about, but you're promoting your art. You're in that promotion cycle, so let's help you do that. The film is called Wrong Reasons. It is a punk rock feature film. Now, we don't want people to not go see it, so you're not going to tell us the entire plot, but give us a synopsis.
Yeah, so basically it's about a punk rock singer who is on the up and up, but she's got a big drug problem, and she gets kidnapped by a strange guy wearing a bear mask. And then we end up, after the opening credits, we end up in the cabin with her and her captor. And we're like, what the hell is going on? Meanwhile, in the B plot is the media circus that happens when somebody famous gets kidnapped. I mean, we all know what it looks like when somebody gets kidnapped that's not famous, but when they are famous, like, holy it goes crazy. So the B plot's all to do with the detective and the media surrounding the disappearance. And then I mean, I don't know if we want to say much more.
No, yeah, the themes are like we tackle addiction, we tackle the 24-hour news cycle and the kind of dangers that are inherent with it. And like lots of themes of what else? Where am I missing?
Broken home,
what it means, like how punk rock can be like the family that you make it.
Yeah, like spirituality being like punk rock and music being a replacement for spirituality in the 21st century, and exploring that and kind of relationships. And there's a lot going on.
That last one's fascinating because, Ohio's not quite the Bible Belt like the South, but it still is a little bit the Bible Belt. So coming back home and presenting art that has some of those themes might be an interesting challenge. So
I'm excited to see how it plays.
It's going to be a really eclectic audience. I'm really excited.
So, Josh, you wrote the film.
Yes, sir.
And you directed the film.
Yes, sir. And I was the co-DP, and I edited, and I colored, and I did sound design.
So you did most of the work, is what we're hearing.
Well, that's fair. There was a crew of 5 people. I just handled a lot of the post-production.
And it's definitely his baby.
And it's Liv on the trailer cover. So Liv is the main character, the person that gets kidnapped.
That's right.
So you're a writer. I mean, I know you're both musicians, and so I understand writing from writing music. I do not understand writing a movie. How does that happen? Like, so explain to me the creative process behind writing an entire story, because that's beyond my ability level.
Well, you anything you do, just fail enough times and you might strike gold eventually. I started this script probably 8 years ago?
It was November 2015.
November 2015. And I've written it at various budget levels. I mean, at one point, we kind of thought that we could get north of $2 million for this. And then that quickly became apparent that there was no way in hell that anybody was going to finance somebody's first feature for that amount. So I wrote it at various budget levels and eventually came down to where we landed, which is $92,000, which we were able to put together with Kevin Smith's help. The entire concept for me spurred from the idea of what would it take to what if somebody would have saved Amy Winehouse or cleaned up Kurt Cobain or any number of the 27 Club that we've lost along the way? Would they be doing that for their own benefit, or would it be selfless or selfish? So I just really became enamored with the moral ambiguity of that concept, and that's kind of where that was the genesis for writing a feature that really just gets in the murk with that question.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think you were also really inspired by the question of people that come from totally different backgrounds and totally different worlds with different perspectives on the world, how they can both find something so special in punk rock and it just changed it's really about the spirituality of
spirituality is not a word I'm willing to throw out. But I would
Tribalism.
I would say, and it's a almost a quote from the movie, but religion is inherent in us through evolution, part of wanting to belong to something bigger. And I think everybody finds that along the way, even if it's not religion. It's just an excuse to get together with like-minded people. There seems to be a need for that, deep in our DNA community. Yeah. And for me, it was always, coming from broken homes, it was always very much finding it in punk rock. And I just wanted to kind of just, do a piece on what that means for other people coming from other sides of economic backgrounds, coming from, different sides of the tracks kind of idea, if that makes sense.
This is how I know that this is a pretty awesome piece of art, is that both of you who are very involved in the creation of this project describe it in different ways. It obviously means something different to the two of you, and but both of you were there right at the beginning. I'm assuming that Josh didn't just crawl up in the closet and write this without any input from anybody. I mean, Liv, you were there while he was coming up with this project, and obviously you believe in it enough to be the main actor and to support him in this project. So it says something to me about what you've created that the two of you who obviously care about it so much don't describe it the same way.
Yeah, totally.
Interesting take. That's
interesting. Yeah, I think we both get something different out of it. Yeah.
What does a producer do? It says that Liv Roush is the producer. You said you're the.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I have a background in production work. So I've spent the last 8-9 years working as going from a production office assistant to now being a production supervisor on multi-million-dollar movies. I just did Maestro for Bradley Cooper. I do large budget stuff for the man, for Netflix and stuff, and then I do our own low budget passion projects. So to answer the question of being a producer, I guess it's really production knowledge that I've gained. I don't think I answered that very well, but okay. So what a producer does is essentially, first of all, is connecting all the creative dot points. So it's getting the writer and the director and the producers and the cast all on the same page. So making sure that you've got all of those elements in sync and available and happy. And once you've got that, you've got to get together a shooting schedule and a budget. Once you've got that, then you go into casting and you go into finding your shooting locations. And then after that, you kind of take a back seat while the shooting's going on. And then you keep everything in line during the post-production schedule. So it's many different elements. Producing a movie from start to finish is like having a baby. It's such a long process from initial development to the movie coming out and seeing it grow over years. It's a really long process. So
also, she's a professional babysitter to everybody involved because everybody has big egos, and she has to make sure that none of us are fighting, that none of us have infighting.
Yeah, I refer to it as kindergarten, where I've got to make sure that all of the children have their toys and their friends that they want to sit with, and then they get their nap time on time, and that nobody has a tanty. It's it's a really backwards way of answering the question, but yeah.
It sounds a lot like project management.
100%. That's all it is. Like when I tell my family back home about producing, and people are like, it's so elusive, and I'm like, it's really not. It's like wedding planning or event management or project management. It's the exact same skill set. It's just specified for one particular industry that's really volatile in terms of you. All of this money is on the line for, not so much on this project, but on larger projects. So much money is on the line for one day where you've got to have like all of these cast people there, and the weather's got to be right, and the chance of something f***ing up is so big. You've really got to. It's like alchemy. You have got to. It's really high stakes, is I guess what
you got to mitigate disasters before they rear their head.
Yeah,
because they will.
Yeah, so project management with like high stakes, but also at the end of the day, the high stakes are entertainment, so it really shouldn't be that high stakes. Like, yeah, it's much more high stakes if the event is like
a cancer benefit,
something like that. Something serious.
So $92,000 sounds like a lot to me, but I am aware that in movie production, that is not a lot of money. So you've got to be able to do all your work and then not go over your budget, which probably, I'm going to assume, limits where you can shoot and how much you can pay the actors and the professionals that are working with you on the project, which might explain why there are only 5 people on the crew and everybody has to work extra hard. What kind of things did you have to do to make that budget stretch, like in order to effectively meet your budget?
Well, I'll let her tackle most of this, but the budget was $92K, which we shot during not the height of COVID, but immediately afterwards. So
September 2020. So
25% of our budget right off the top became not cameras, became not talent, became it took a lot of things that we were able to do in 92, and it reduced us to 69 or 68 or something like that. So that was also a lot of the reason for the 5-person crew is everybody was masked up, everybody was still freaked out. We didn't know anything about this new pandemic. So that was also a lot of the reason for the very, very tight 5-person crew, but I'll let you take the rest.
Yeah. I think I can say that no crew member got paid on this. It was a collaborative effort between our creative friends who are passionate about the project. Literally nobody, right? Nobody got paid.
I think Cam might have got a little tiny piece for the score.
Yeah.
But more than that, yes, we didn't pay anybody, but everybody involved in this owns a percentage. And it was very important to me, since they're all getting behind me. They all own a higher percentage of the movie than I do. So if this movie does great, and we're hoping, but we're not expecting, they will all get a piece of that. I'll get a slightly smaller piece of that because my mentality was, hell, if you can get behind me and my then you've more than earned your piece of the movie.
It's very unusual for the writer, director, editor to have the smallest piece the smallest piece of the profit pie. I think I'm really proud that he did that. I think that's a really collaborative way to do it. So profit sharing is one of the ways that we were able to stretch the budget. We were a SAG, so we were a union show, which meant that we were able to hire all of our professional friends while still pleasing their union. So we spent, I think it was probably over a third of the budget was just paying the cast the minimum rates. We spent a bunch of the budget on COVID testing. The rest of it was spent on camera equipment, and locations was the biggest thing, because we shot for about 2 weeks. We shot up at a cabin in Idlewild, which meant we needed to house our 6 crew, and our 2 actors up there as well. So that gets expensive with that as well. And yeah, it was really locations and stuff like that. So yeah, it doesn't go a long way, but we stretched it as much as we could.
So really, everybody involved truly believes in your vision, Josh. That's what it sounds like. Art for art's sake, a little bit.
I mean, to a certain degree, yes. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think at the end of the day, we all came together and created something much better than the dumb thing I wrote.
Let's be optimistic, which I am not an optimistic person, and I feel
Me neither.
as an artist, I'm like, you make something, you're like, I hope people actually listen to this, or in your case, watch this. Let's assume that it's successful beyond your wildest dreams. So I'm going to let you dream a little bit here. Does that mean that the next project, you're more likely to get the bigger funding that you were looking for on this one? Is that how the industry works?
That is ideally, in best case scenario, yeah, you start taking meetings around town and they ask you what your next project is. I don't know if that's going to happen with this at all, but we've already got like the next one. She's written what draft are you on? Seven. She's on the 7th draft of her feature, which will be our next project, called Thymus, but the working title we've been using had been Beating Our Chests. So we already know what the next one is, and we've written it to be a very, modest $300,000, regardless of whether, people offer us more or not. We want to make sure that our sophomore movie is, very reasonable as well, just so, it makes it a lot easier to recover that amount for the people that were kind enough to stake us in the first place.
Yeah, you never want to go from like 92,000 to like $10 million. That's quite a jump. I think it's personally smarter to make the smaller budget jumps to keep proving yourself over and over. Now, to answer your question, if you have a great return on investment, does that guarantee your next project? It should. Does that happen? Not necessarily. Does Hollywood have a lot of people that do a giant flop and then get paid again to do another movie the next year? Yes, they do. So there's a lot of like hypocrisy in this industry, shall we say?
So, in other words, it's not necessarily merit-based. It sounds a lot like music.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, it's very, very similar.
Yes.
Which means that if you're doing it, you obviously have to love it, or else you wouldn't be able to deal with all the nonsense.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This is something I didn't know was a thing because I am not in your line of work. You are actually touring, much like a band would tour a record. You're touring with this movie, and you're going to come home, kind of. You're going to come to Dayton and show the movie at the Neon downtown on February 4th.
Yes, sir.
Where'd you get the idea to take the thing on the road? Like, how did that come together?
Well, we got distribution for our feature through MVD, which I'm not sure if you're familiar, but they're a famous punk rock like label for video distribution. They've done the Dead Boys set at CBGB's in like the late 70s. They've done the Cramps released from like the Napa State Institution in like the early 80s. They're a video distribution label that's been around like almost as long as punk rock has. So they're kind enough to, they took us on and they're going to do our physical media, which we get physical media, which like in this day and age is a very precious thing to me. I mean, as you can see, I'm a nerd from my shelf here.
Yeah.
But they told us, they're like, we could pick up theatrical, but truly, like, because we have the benefit of Kevin Smith having our back and his social media presence, they're like, you're going to probably make more money if you just keep the rights to yourself. So we own our own theatrical rights, just as we own the final cut of the movie,
which is so unprecedented. Nobody does that.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, and you can only get by doing something like that at literally this budget range. So we were like, well, we own our own theatrical rights. Let's book a screening. And Kevin just bought this new theater in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, called the Smodcastle Cinema, which we're getting ready to go back tomorrow, I believe. I've been the unofficial tech manager there for the last few months. But we did that screening and we booked it and it went really well. And then we booked an LA screening, like a premiere, and it went really well. And we're like, let's just take it on the road. Like we're also the tour managers for Kevin. And we tour managed the Reboot Roadshow, which was Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. And we just got off the road with Clerks 3. So we've like networked and made a ton of connections with independent like mom and pop theaters. So we hit them up and they've all been super supportive. Like after the day after Dayton, we go to Philly, after Philly, it's Chicago, and we bounce around trying to show the movie in like the old Roadhouse style, like they did kind of in the 70s. And we just kind of thought that was a more natural fit, being, punk rock and all.
That's pretty cool. I wasn't going to mention the Kevin Smith thing, but since you mentioned it, how do you know that gentleman?
I have been working with Kevin for about 13 years. I think she did the math the other day. I started playing cards with him as a fan, and I was coming out of Orange County punk rock. I was coming out of a band called Piss and Blood, and it was like it didn't end up being the best experience at the end. It's 5 sweaty dudes in one 10 by 10 room, a lot of clashing egos. Everybody's got their own ideas, and I kind of came out of it like wanting to still do art, but not wanting to answer to anybody to do it. And that's kind of where I took on filmmaking. And since I was, already, kind of buddies with him more or less, I started like volunteering for his live shoots. I was running crowd camera. I was running crowd camera in Australia when this one was in the front row. And I was supposed to be shooting the crowd, but in reality, I was just shooting the pretty blonde up front.
I think that worked out pretty well for both of you.
She's a lucky girl.
It did. Very serendipitous.
But yeah, so that's like I kind of climbed through the ranks, and I've been everything from his daughter's bodyguard and driver to like now the tech manager unofficially at the Smod Castle Cinemas to his tour manager. So like on the Reboot Roadshow tour, he like asked us what our next project is, and I mentioned this, and he was kind enough to introduce us to David Shapiro, who financed half the feature. And to get the other half of it, he did a thing called Kevios, which are essentially just cameos. But once we discovered that Cameo takes 10 to 15%, we're like, well, screw those guys. So we did it ourselves, and we hooked up a video. What do you call it? Two-way mirror. Right.
Oh my God.
Anyway, we were able to do it entirely ourselves. And we did it with, I believe, 250 people that like bought Kevios. And that's how we got the other half of the budget. So I've been working with that cat on and off for a long time. And do you want to tell where you come into the story?
Well, I guess first of all, like Kevin and Josh and me as well, to a more limited degree, it's always been a shared interest in each other's projects. It's always been like, I'll do a favor for you, you'll do a favor for me. And that relationship's been really beneficial to everyone. So we're so grateful for Kevin's support for all of our projects. He's always been such a rock for support. Yeah. And then I came into it. So I met Josh in Australia when he was on the tour in 2012. And I kind of came back with him as a souvenir. I was 19 and I was like, this sounds like a fucking rad time. We'll go and I'll test out Hollywood. I had no interest in filmmaking whatsoever at the time, but he was in Hollywood doing his thing. And I was like, this has kind of always been my thing as well. Like I adore movies. I've loved production ever since I was a kid.
She's great at management.
Yeah. So management's always been my thing. And then producing was just such a natural fit. And I had my first job in the US when I got my visa. I got my first job as an office production assistant on Kevin Smith's 2014 movie, Yoga Hosers. Started my career there and then just kind of worked my way up from there. And then I've been doing, the corporate projects for Netflix and New Regency and Universal for the last 8-9 years. But on the side, whenever Kevin and Josh are doing something and my time's free, I'm always doing projects with them because they're like, Kevin's world is just the most fun world to work with. He's got the best reputation in the industry as being the nicest, most collaborative director to work for. And that reputation couldn't be more accurate. Like he really is the best collaborative director out there, in my opinion. And yeah.
They
always say don't meet your heroes because they'll disappoint you, but it turns out that he seems like a decent fella.
Yeah. And
he's the one.
He's the one. Yeah. I've met a lot of heroes that don't live up to that, but he sure does. The way that he toured Jay and Silent Bob Reboot and the way that he toured Clerks 3 was really original. Like I haven't seen any other directors do something like this.
Not on his scale.
And it's such an effective way to tour the movie, especially for somebody like him with such an engaged fan base. And it was such a success that we just thought, like, we can kind of do this model as well on a micro scale. Let's experiment and see how it goes. So Kevin's doing his tour with 2,000 seater venues. We're doing our tour with 50 to 100 seater venues. And that's fine. Like we're so down. If 20 people come to the screening and we get to meet 20 people that want it, but that are interested in our film and in their hometown, like that's the dream, you know?
Well, like we mentioned before we went live and we're recording, it's about the right people seeing your product. It's not about the masses, at least, you know, for us. And it seems like yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You want people that care.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that get it, right? Especially if you have a specific artistic vision that you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Your soundtrack's got a lot of punk bands on it. So I'm going to ask you how you managed to get all that cleared. That's one of the few industry terms I know. Because I'm on the other side of it, right? You got artists that are not necessarily unknowns, like L7, Black Flag. Those are the two that I know the best of the ones that you listed. How did you pull that off?
We've been working for a long time for a charity called Muzak, and it's ran by a guy named Donna Carey. And the whole concept of it is that it puts guitars into the hands of underprivileged youth. And it's a great organization. He's like a writer on The Simpsons. He's a big deal, but he's a punk rocker at heart. And he has every year this like carnival in his backyard, which when I say backyard, I mean a palatial estate of a backyard. But Tim Armstrong from Rancid comes out every year. And, you know, I think Danita from L7, she's like a frequent of it as well. And through the process, like we got to know a couple of these cats. So when it came time for music licensing, we hit up Tim and we hit up Donick. And Tim saying yes, like he's punk rock royalty, the, you know, guitarist, singer of Rancid. Him saying yes just brought everybody else in because we didn't have, you know, as is obvious, much money for this feature. So we paid them the absolute bare minimum, like, and they were so kind to accept it. And once Tim said yes, like everybody else just cascaded into saying yes. I've got a cheat sheet in front of me. It's Tim Armstrong, L7, Black Flag, The Wipers, Channel 3, William Elliott Whitmore, who's one of my personal favorites, The Unseen, who they used to tour through Dayton constantly back in the day, and then our band Byproduct.
Yeah.
Let me take down my cheat sheet now. Yeah, it was really all thanks to Donick and Tim. That initial yes really just kind of gave everybody else it gave us the cred to be able to get and approach people that we definitely do not deserve.
Yeah. It was so, I hate the word humbling. I really hate that word, but it was so awesome to see all of these bands line up for a project that like, it's such a low budget punk rock project. And for any of them to be like, yeah, I'll support this was so awesome for us to have. We didn't expect that when we made this movie. We had no expectation of having any kind of a cool soundtrack. We thought it would just be like our band and that was it. So that was the biggest surprise throughout post-production. I just remember, you know, day after day coming out into the living room and Josh and I being like, should we approach like the Wipers? And him being like, yeah, f it, why not? And then we'd approach the Wipers and we'd tell them our story and they'd be like, yeah, absolutely. We'll jump on board with this. And really unexpected, really crazy. And
one side note, because it seems like you're a music nerd yourself. All of the recordings of the music in this are from my personal vinyl library. So
awesome.
Ripped it all to 24-bit, like 96 kilohertz from my copies. So when you hear the pops and ticks in those records, that's literally my copy.
Man, I'll bet. Did you include that in your pitch? Because I'll bet somebody was a lot more likely to say yes if you told them, you know what, I bought this record and I have it and I want this song because
I didn't, but I should have.
well,
there was a few that we had to because a couple of the versions of the songs, I don't remember which ones specifically were not available anymore. And I can't remember which artist being like, I don't know where you're gonna get this rip, but like, so Josh would record it and do his pops and ticks, and it was just added to the value of it, I think.
So you mentioned your band. This is a good segue to talk about Byproduct. Tell me about your band.
Yeah, totally. So Byproduct okay, so where to begin with Byproduct? So Josh gave me the idea for this script in 2015-16, and he was like, well, you're going to need to look like you can play the guitar in this movie. Like, you've got to be realistic with that. So I picked up the guitar and I started playing and practicing a lot over 2015 through when we shot the movie. And I really got a hang of it and I really loved it. And then I started writing my own songs. There was no intention of me writing songs for the character or anything. In fact, I wrote a bunch of songs just for myself, and we started recording them and we were like, these are kind of really in line with the type of music that the character would make. Let's use these as the character's music. And yeah, so I mean the songs for the byproduct songs are my songs, but they just fit for the character as well.
Well, and also this comes down to the talent of not just her, but also Cam Mosavian. Him and I are in a band called The Overrides, which essentially byproduct is just The Overrides plus Liv singing. But he did the score for this feature. He's done all the scores on all my docs prior. He's the producer. Like he's the real genius when it comes to music, and he's got his own little studio in Long Beach. So it's so easy. Like we'll take a weekend, go down there and work on all the music for our stuff and Overrides and the score and whatever new project we're doing. It all is really on the back of Cam's hard labor that he doesn't make nearly enough money for.
Might this springboard byproduct into more than they tour? Maybe
that'd be ideal. We've like byproduct started during the pandemic, and then we've been on the road basically since the pandemic started. Never been in LA for more than 2 weeks at a time, so we've never had the opportunity to get with the band and do live shows as much as all of us have been dying to. So the second that I'm in LA for more than a week, you better believe we are lining up our first few shows, and we've already got the second album is in the works already. We've recorded 3 of the songs of the 14 songs, so it's just a matter of availability. But you bet if we can, the goal is to get some live shows under our belt this year, and then hell yeah, we'd tour it as well.
And one of the nerdy things that we did for the soundtrack is for byproduct. Her name is Kat Odin in the movie. We wanted to have props so that we could show that she was a real musician. So we had the original byproduct LP actually pressed as like, I think it's 250 copies on, we call it Minstrel Blood Splatter. It's red with like a red center with like clear vinyl. And we actually published that. We actually released that as a under Kat Odin's name. So we have a handful of those copies that I'll give to you once we get out there and meet in person. But we're going to bring a limited number of those that we have left. I think we have like 50 left to each show, and either, probably sell 1 copy and give out 2, something like that. Try to make the initial investment back, but also try to hook up everybody else in the process.
That is a genius product tie-in.
I thought so too. Thank you.
See, you can tell I'm obviously a lot more comfortable talking about the music stuff. I respect film as an art form, but I'm completely ignorant when it comes to that medium. Other than I like to go watch movies that are well done. But music,
I hope you like ours.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. So this is one that you can both answer. What was the first song you can remember hearing in your life? You have to think back to toddler times.
Oh my God. I guess for me, it would have to be the Wiggles, the Australian children's band, the Wiggles. Do you know who they are?
I do.
Yep. So the Wiggles was probably my first. I mean, I would be like 2, 3, 4, but they were like a rad rock and roll band that just couldn't get any money for their gigs, so they started doing children's music instead. And I think that carries over. I think they're actually a pretty sweet band. I mean, I know the lead singer's dead, but yeah, I'd say the Wiggles, probably like Fruit Salad, Yummy Yummy, or something like that. Big chugga big red car.
It would have been something country for me. My dad was a big country fan, so I mean, I'd like to say something cool like Cash, but honestly, it's probably Garth Brooks or something.
All right, so that makes you both a lot younger than me, because Garth Brooks started in the late 80s, right?
I think that tracks.
All right, because like when I was in high school, he was a star. I graduated in the mid 90s, so all right. That's
What's your answer? I'm curious.
Yeah,
my answer, you were only the 3rd podcast guest to ever ask me this, is Babe by Styx, which came out in 79. I was born in 77. My parents had to have had the vinyl copy of that. Otherwise, I don't know how I would remember having heard it all the time. And I did not know the song name or the band name until I was an adult. But that song stuck with me like my whole life, and then once I found out, I was like, oh, that's what that was. So
interesting.
Music's weird like that, though. Like I don't know the words, but I could la-di-da you the entire song, verse, chorus, like the whole thing. Yeah, and I was literally in diapers when I heard it.
That's awesome.
So both of you write songs. When it is time to write a song, what's the first tool you reach for?
First tool I reach for would be the Memos app on my phone for sure, because it's yeah. If I come up with some kind of melody and some kind of lyrics, it's usually just in my head first, so it's always recording that so I don't forget it, so that when eventually I can get back to my guitar, then I pick up the guitar. So yeah, I guess the phone for voice memos would be the first tool for sure.
I'm Android, so it's Google Keep, but it's the same answer.
It's amazing how modern technology has changed the way that songwriters do the thing. For me, it's I mean, I don't have any complicated software, but just voice memos that I've saved.
Same, yeah. That's all I need. Like, I don't need anything high tech for that. I mean, I'll be like literally at a train station, like whispering something into my phone just to make sure I get it before I like forget it. You know, you're always worried that you're gonna forget it. But
when you do all your demos on GarageBand.
I do. That's true. Yeah. So it's on the voice memo, and then I can finally get to a guitar and figure it out. Then it's getting the time to do like a sounding demo in GarageBand. Then I take it to Cam and Josh, and I'm like, make this sound good.
It's nice to have people around that can do that.
Oh my God, I'm so lucky.
Do you write music first or word first?
Words, for sure.
Josh?
You?
Same answer. What about yourself?
Music 95% of the time.
Okay.
You're half and half, Josh. You come up with like riffs all the time where you're like, this would be cool, but like, yeah.
Yeah, I'll get a riff stuck in my head, and sometimes I'll form something around it. And sometimes, like, I had a riff that I wrote like probably 15 years ago, and it was just so weird that I could never find a way to make music work, or lyrics work with it. So eventually, like, Cam was doing the score for the Clerks 3 doc, and he was like, I feel like we need one more track, so give me a few weeks and I'll come up with a riff. I was like, hold on, I got an idea. And I played him like this riff that I've had in the back of my head for forever and I've always been fiddling with. He's like, that's perfect. And then he turns around and like 2 days later, he's got a full version of the song that's better than the thing I came up with in the first place.
Makes you wish you'd showed it to him sooner, I'll bet.
Right? Seriously. Could have been a real song.
Liv, she's been making music since 2015. So that's 7 years. Come on, 8. How long have you been making music, Josh?
I believe I was 13 when I first got the internet, and almost immediately downloaded a pirated version of Pro Tools from SoulSeek and started experimenting and learning like pre-YouTube. So there was no tutorials. I had to fumble through the whole thing myself. And if you listen to the quality, it's very apparent that that's what was happening. But I think I used the onboard mic in my computer and have been fumbling around with not much more success ever since I was 13.
Yeah, so you've got some time in. How do you know when a song that you've written is done? Like, how do you know when to stop?
Liv, I'll let you tackle this.
When to stop? God,
when Cam yells at you.
Yeah, no, honestly, not until we're like actually recording the final vocals of the recording, because I'll change the lyrics right up until we're recording. Like, sometimes we'll do the first take and I'll be like, Josh, does this make more sense? Is this word or that word? What do you think's better? So really up until Cam's like, okay, we're done recording this song. And then I'm like, okay, now I can let it go. But I'm always open to changing the lyrics like right up until the end.
Due to some internet connectivity difficulties, well, it's an abrupt end to our conversation. I want to thank Josh and Liv Roush for taking the time to talk to me. For those of you who live in the Dayton area, this Saturday at the Neon Theater downtown, you can see Wrong Reasons at noon and meet Josh and Liv Roush. Thank you also, dear listener, for spending some time with me. And yeah, you get a third podcast this week. On Friday, we're talking to a musician and tech startup person. Come on back for that conversation.